What fan theory do you accept as 100% true? That the pause Shrek makes after Donkey asks his name is him coming up with the name Shrek on the spot. Kronk is a squirrel turned into a human by Isma. Bob Vance is actually a really clever businessman who wanted as much free advertising as possible. He knew he was being filmed for a show that would air on TV, but he didn't know which of his scenes would get edited out, so he mentions the name of his business as much as possible. The Flintstones and Jetsons are on the same planet at the same time. One set of humans abandoned the planet's surface to live in the sky and left others to live on the ground. The Flintstones know about things like cars, telephones, and record players. In the Jetsons, the ground is rarely seen, and it appears to be populated by homeless people. Darth Vader can only survive his terrible injuries through the power of the dark side by focusing his pain and suffering. It gives so much more meaning when he says it is the only way, and explains why he dies when he rejects the dark side at the end of ROTJ. Kevin and Stacy broke up in the office because of Kevin's gambling problem. When they were eating breakfast, Kevin said, "I think the Eagles can clinch it," and Stacy said, "We are done." After that, there are regular mentions of how his gambling problem screws things up, and tells Mitchell we should always hide our money problems from women. Apostrophe. Courage the Cowardly Dog is from the point of view of courage, and it's just how dogs perceive normal things, hence why the owners act normal the whole time. MCU The series Agent Carter, where the story is being told by Peggy Carter to Sharon Carter while she was ill. The series abruptly cut off because Peggy died. 1. Casper is Richie Rich's ghost. 2. Donkey from Shrek is actually one of the boys from Pleasure Island and Pinocchio. That Kevin Malone from The Office was embezzling money. 1. Dunder Mifflin was in financial trouble. 2. He's a known gambler. 3. He says what he does, and Martin, who went to jail, did with the same thing. 4. He had a made up number, Clevin, to fix the books. 5. He bought a bar after getting fired. The reason The Office has a documentary crew filming them is because an accountant, Tom, killed himself, and they are filming how a workplace deals with this tragedy. From How I Met Your Mother, that Barney Stinson was not really that bad of a guy, but because it was from Ted's point of view, he wanted to make Robin's ex-husband seem like kind of a bad guy so he'd warm up to the idea of him dating her again. And just in general, that Ted is an unreliable narrator, making himself and his relationship with Robin look a bit better than it probably was, to make his kids more okay with him dating her. The Gilligan's Island experiment theory. Gilligan's Island was an elaborate social experiment conducted by the professor with the aid of Gilligan. It makes no sense that a professor that can make a radio out of coconuts can't fix a 2-foot hole in a boat or build a seaworthy raft. They are there because of him, and because of Gilligan's bumbling every episode. But why? Why else would you drag a group of 60-diverse people to a desert island to study them? It's a social experiment to see how the castaways get along. Professor recruits Gilligan before the trip. Gilligan's blunder causes them to land on the island, and he subtly sabotages every escape attempt until it's time to leave. Meanwhile, Professor gets to study them and collect notes on what happens. I hope the research paper was worth it, you monster. That the aliens in Signs are suffering a form of capital punishment. A spacifering species would obviously have the technology to detect water and at least wear suits to protect their skin. So those on Earth's surface were dropped naked and left to eventually die of exposure or from the primitive inhabitants. To come to mind. 1. Scarlet Witch's wish at the end of House of M, no more mutants, created the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 2. Qui-Gon Jinn was what could be called an agnostic in the Jedi Order. He knew the Force was real, but he also believed there was a tangible, scientific basis for it, which is why he is the only Jedi concerned about midichlorians. That Harry Potter after the 4th book is suffering from PTSD and nobody realizes / cares or tries to help him. The Pokemon one where Team Rocket are actually there to watch over Ash and makes sure he doesn't get into too much trouble. Whether the theory includes Giovanni being his dad or not is irrelevant to me. I just think it's cute that the bad guys are like incompetent on purpose. Luke's green lightsaber comes from Qui-Gon's green crystal that like found among Obi-Wan's things when he went back to Tatooine. Seeing as Luke didn't know nothing about nothing at that point, it was either that or Yoda's. The end scene of Inception is real life, not a dream. The movie explains that a totem cannot be touched by anyone other than its owner, lest it lose its reliability. The movie also explains that Cobb's totem, the spinning top, was Mal's before she died. But this cannot be as he is not the original owner, and now that has touched it, the top cannot be trusted. Cobb's actual totem is his wedding ring, which he doesn't wear in real life, because Mal is dead, but he does wear in dreams, because Mal often appears in them. The final scene includes a shot of him putting his hands on the table with the bearing finger, indicating that he is in real life, and is actually seeing his children again. The spinning top is irrelevant to this fact, and it does not matter that the film ends before the audience can tell if the top falls or spins forever. You just satisfied me 5 years after finishing that movie. Thank you. The super soldier serum used on Captain America is derived from the heart-shaped herb that the Black Panther used. The reason why they couldn't replicate it and had to be sure on who they use it on was because it's very difficult to procure due to Wakanda's secrecy. In Pokemon Sun/Moon, the protagonist doesn't understand a word that anyone is saying, and that's why they consistently have that dumb expression on their face for the entire game. The Joker in The Dark Knight is an ex-Black Ops. That Chewie and R2 are the real heroes of Star Wars. Neville Longbottom had such a bad memory at the start of the series because he witnessed one of his parents being tortured and had to be obliviated to try and lessen the trauma. We've seen instances in the books where strong memory charms can cause chronic forgetfulness, and the worse the memory, the stronger the spell needed. Bojack Horseman is the longest setup to the horse walked into a bar joke. Why the long face? The Harry Potter stories are as Harry remembered them, and his perspective is slightly unreliable, based on his age and maturity, though the events are all largely correct. The fiendish nature of every single Slytherin, the number of times everyone cheered and clapped for him, especially in books 1 and 2, aren't actually how it was, but how 11 and 12-year-old Harry perceived them. His perception gets more reliable as he gets older, and the narratives get a bit more realistic again, though they take a turn for the moody in order when he's got the perception of an angsty, depressed teenager. The Incredibles, Edna designed Syndrome's costume, and deliberately did so with a cape to get him killed. Seemingly naked cartoon characters aren't actually naked, and that is why you can't see genitals. General Ross of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is actually a Skrull, which is why he always throws impediments at the Avengers, e.g., trying to get rid of Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk, making the Avengers sign the Sokovia Accords, etc. Close bracket. That Filch is actually serving a sentence as Hogwarts housekeeper who can't use magic. Yes, he is a squib. His job is still what students do for detention, and that Mrs. Norris is actually a maledictus and was previously in love with Filch. Jess's original owner, Emily, is Andy's mom. In the Avatar, The Last Airbender universe, Suain is the daughter of Sokka and Toph. Suain's father is never mentioned in The Legend of Korra, a strange detail considering we were explicitly told who fathered her half-sister before her. She bends fluidly like a waterbender despite being an earth/metal bender by blood, and she has a curious fixation with meteorites. Similar to Sokka, she also has a somewhat darker complexion than her half-sister, hinting that she could indeed have ties to those of the world with darker skin tones, like waterbenders. This would also explain why Suki, Sokka's presumed partner by the end of Avatar, The Last Airbender, is literally never mentioned in The Legend of Korra, and why Sokka's cameos are few and far between. Many fans were upset by the writer's depiction of their beloved characters as flawed parents. Canonically establishing that two of them had an affair and child together could have been heresy lol. SpongeBob SquarePants and the town of Bikini Bottom are the result of the radioactive fallout from the atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll in the years after WW2. That all the Harry Potter characters in Gryffindor are there because they were brave enough to ask to be placed there. Harry should have been Slytherin, Hermione should have been Ravenclaw, and Ron should have been Hufflepuff. But they all asked to be Gryffindor instead, and that is what showed they belonged there. Edit. Spelling. Robin Arryn is the bastard son of Lord Petty Baelish. There might be some validity to infidelity in their relationship. In Clash of Kings, Varys meets Tyrion in a tunnel going to Chattea's brothel. Varys mentions that the tunnel was dug for another king's hand, whose honor would not allow him to enter such a house openly, given that Chattea is from the Summer Isles. But her daughter Alea, who is 16, was born in King's Landing. We can assume the brothel is 16 to 25 years old, which would mean that certain king's hand was likely Jon Arryn, though it could potentially have been Tywin Lannister, or less likely Owen Merryweather or John Connington. Both only served as the king's hand for a short period, the bulk of which was spent fighting Robert's rebellion. The last Dragonborn, your player character in Skyrim, is Shezareen, an avatar of the god Lorkhan, Shah to the Nords, who created the mortal plane of Mundus. Lorkhan is said to be gathering the greatest warriors ever to live at the Hall of Valor in Sovngarde in order to prepare an army for the end days in which he will duel Alduin. In the game, Lorkhan is nowhere to be seen in Sovngarde. You can sit in his throne without being reduced to ash, and you fight Lorkhan's fight with Alduin. This is all because you are Lorkhan. That Harry Potter wizard shat themselves on the spot and made it disappear after before Muggle plumbing was a thing one of the Weirlies made up and went viral. Giovanni was using his criminal empire to try and take down Mewtwo, trying to find ancient Pokemon, ghost types, the Master Ball, etc. Also slightly related, Ditto is a failed clone of Mew. Weighs the same, nose transform, colors are the same in normal and shiny form. Pretty basic bitch theories that everyone's heard though. Kevin Malone from The Office is secretly a genius and his slow personality is just a ruse to continue to embezzle money from Dunder Mifflin. I mean, the guy bought a ducking bar right after he was fired. Paw Patrol Adventure Bay is set in Argentina, penguins, and therefore funded by Nazi war spoils. Who else would let a child and a bunch of dogs handle all the municipal and emergency services for an entire town? That Event Horizon is a Warhammer 40,000 prequel and a movie is the story of humanity's first encounter with the warp. Ziva did not die, and Tony left Sis to live a life with her. House dies in the season 8 finale and Wilson begins imagining him to cope during his last few months. Hence how House managed to escape from the upper story of a collapsing, burning building, how he manages to supposedly switch dental records to fake his death, and why he's just casually out in the open when Wilson sees him despite his presumed dead status. Also explains the soundtrack choice for the closing scene. The only previous use of Enjoy Yourself was when it was sung by a hallucination. House is thinly veiled Sherlock Holmes. Holmes/House. Get it? Analog. This first part isn't a theory. His condo/townhome address was 221B. Him faking his death falls right in line with Holmes being killed at Reichenbach Falls and then actually being alive. Your story works as a drama, but really overinflates the lazy writing in the latter seasons, and I like that show. That cursed child is not canon. In fact, everything JK has tweeted is not canon. Rick has explored so many universes that he discovered that he and his entire reality is nothing more than the creation of Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. With that knowledge, he is both severely depressed and nihilistic while also feeling compelled to maintain an entertaining lifestyle in order to keep the series from being cancelled and thus ensuring his family's continued survival. If you rewatch the entire series, he'll sometimes let slip that he is a main character in a show that will last for several seasons. He'll make up random plot arcs, like the need to find Szechuan sauce, and recklessly endanger himself and the universe, just to ensure his reality doesn't cease to exist. It's actually a pretty horrifically tragic premise if you think about it, but in line with something Harmon might concoct. Pulp Fiction is actually a sequel to Reservoir Dogs. The briefcase that Marcellus wants to be retrieved contains the diamonds that were stolen in Road, and that Buddy Holly lookalike waiting tables at Jackrabbit Slim's is actually Mr. Pink hiding out in disguise, which would be delicious irony considering his stated views on tipping. Willy Wonka is in fact a crazed child killer. I'm starting to believe the Snowpiercer is a sequel to Willy Wonka more and more. Dale Gribble knew Nancy was cheating with John Ridcon. Yep, and he lets it happen because he gets to keep being a father to Joseph, who he knows is John's child. If he addressed the affair with Nancy, she might have left him and taken Joseph with him, his only son. Even if not by blood. Also, might be why he's scared of Joseph after he goes through puberty, both because he's bigger and muscular and raging with hormones. But he could also be scared because Joseph might attack/kill him in Dale's mind if he found out who his real father was. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.